I never thought I would be writing something like this, much less exposing my entire family on the internet. But I reached that point where either I get this out of my system or I start doubting my own sanity. I live in the United States, in a mid-sized city on the East Coast. I work at a large university hospital. I'm in the final phase of my medical residency. And honestly, my life over the past few years has been a repetitive cycle of long shifts, and that constant feeling that I'm always owing something to someone, to the hospital, to the patients, to myself. I'm engaged. My fiancé works in a field completely different from mine, related to content production and events. He's sociable, well-known, charismatic. I am functional. I've always been the responsible one, the predictable one, the person who does what needs to be done even when she's exhausted. I have a twin sister, completely identical, but not in the way the world sees us. Since we were little, the comparison was never subtle. It was never the "you're different" kind. It was always, she's better at this. She suits that better. She knows how to carry herself. When we grew up, that turned into that uncomfortable silence after someone said something out of line and pretended they hadn't. My sister was always the socially acceptable version of me. The one who knows how to smile at the right time. The one who chooses clothes that draw attention without looking like she's trying too hard. At the beginning of my engagement, I ignored many signs. Maybe because I was too tired to question them. Maybe because part of me still wanted to believe those things were just old resentment, unresolved childhood stuff. My mother, for example, never said anything directly offensive. It was always framed as concern. She commented that my work pace didn't match a life as a couple. She asked if I was sure I could handle a serious relationship. Once at a dinner, she mentioned that my sister had more emotional availability. I convinced myself I was exaggerating, but my sister started showing up too much in matters that had nothing to do with her. She commented on my engagement as if it were a collective project, asked details I hadn't shared, gave opinions no one had asked for. Sometimes I realized she knew things before I had even officially told anyone. And when I asked how she knew, the answer was always the same vague line. Someone mentioned it. I heard it around. Another thing was the way my mother spoke about me to third parties. I found out by accident, in an awkward conversation with a family acquaintance, that my mother had been saying I was very stressed, and that maybe it wasn't the best time to get married. The acquaintance said it with an uncomfortable smile, like she wasn't sure she should have told me. A few days later, I had one of those mornings that start out wrong. The hospital was too quiet when I arrived. That false calm that only exists before everything goes wrong. During the shift, my mind wouldn't stop. I saw patients, made notes, discussed cases with colleagues. It was close to mid-morning when my phone vibrated in the pocket of my coat. I ignored it the first time, ignored it the second. The third time, I thought it might be important, and glanced quickly. It was a message from my fiancé. It wasn't a normal message. There was no good morning, no emoji. None of the light tone he always used with me, even when he was stressed. It was a sequence of messages, one after another, written too fast. He asked why I had done that, said he felt put in an uncomfortable position, mentioned something that almost turned into a serious problem. I replied asking what he was talking about. He took a few minutes to answer, and those minutes felt like hours. When the reply came, it was accompanied by a photo. In the photo, there was someone wearing a dress I recognized. A simple, neutral dress I had set aside to wear to a professional event I wouldn't be able to attend that week because of work. I asked him to explain calmly. He called as soon as he could. He said he believed I had changed my mind and shown up as a surprise at that event. He said it felt strange at first, the way she talked with his friends, but he tried to brush it off until he realized something didn't add up. A different way of speaking, a reaction that didn't match me. When he realized it, he confronted her. My first reaction was denial, thinking there had to be some absurd misunderstanding. But deep down, really deep down, I already knew exactly who had done that. I left work as soon as my shift allowed. When I walked in, I found my sister in the kitchen as if nothing had happened. She looked up when she saw me. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just asked, firmly, what she had done the night before. She sighed, as if I were being dramatic, said she didn't see the problem, that we had done similar things when we were younger, that I was too busy and someone had to keep up appearances. I said it wasn't a joke, that it involved my relationship. She shrugged, said no one had noticed, that people had even commented on how good it was to see me more present, that maybe I was overreacting. That was when something changed. There wasn't a big argument. What there was a heavy silence between us. I went up to my room. She didn't think she was wrong, and that scared me more than the act itself. What bothered me most wasn't even her audacity. It was the naturalness, the absolute certainty that what she did was acceptable. I remembered old situations I had always minimized, times when she took on commitments in my name, laughing about it later. always with that light, almost childish smile that made any attempt at confrontation seem like my exaggeration. A few minutes later, I heard my mother's voice coming from the living room. She called my name, said dinner was ready. When I got there, the two of them were sitting at the table. I said objectively that it couldn't happen again, that no one had permission to speak for me, show up in my place, or interfere in my relationship. I didn't raise my voice. I was clear. My mother sighed deeply, like she was dealing with a difficult child, said I was too sensitive, that my sister was just trying to help. I stayed silent while she talked. At some point, she said my sister had more ease in that kind of environment, that maybe it would be good for me to learn from her. In the days that followed, there was something heavier in the air. My sister started moving around the house with a different confidence. She spoke loudly on the phone, mentioned names of people I knew were connected to my fiancé's work, commented on future events as if she were part of them. Sometimes she let loose remarks, thrown into the air, like, some people value presents more than promises. I pretended not to hear, but I heard everything. At the hospital, I started making small mistakes. Nothing serious, but enough to make me even more tense. Forgetting a chart open, repeating a check I had already done. A colleague noticed and asked if I was okay. I said yes, automatically. It was on a specific afternoon, after a particularly heavy shift, that something inside me gave a little. I had left earlier that day for a wedding dress fitting, a commitment I had been postponing for weeks because something more urgent always came up. A patient, an extra shift, an unexpected meeting. I walked into the shop with my head still at the hospital. The salesperson talked. I answered on autopilot. The dress didn't fit right anymore. It was loose in some places, tight in others. My body had changed without me noticing. While the salesperson adjusted pins and commented on possible alterations, I heard a laugh behind me. That unmistakable laugh. I turned slowly. My sister was there. She shouldn't have been. I hadn't mentioned the time. I hadn't asked for company. I hadn't said anything. And yet, there she was, leaning against one of the counters, watching me through the mirror's reflection. She said she was in the area, that she thought it would be nice to come along, that I seemed too tense. She came closer, touched the fabric of the dress, made comments about the cut, about how that style favored certain body types more. At no point did she ask how I was. At no point did she seem to notice her presence wasn't welcome. I asked for a moment, went to the bathroom and closed the door harder than necessary. My hands were shaking with anger. When I came out, she was no longer leaning against the counter. She was wearing a dress, my dress. It wasn't the same model, but it was clearly the dress reserved in my name, fitted, perfect on her body, as if it had been made for her. I didn't make a scene. I just said the dress wasn't hers, that she needed to take it off. She said it was just to see how it looked, that she didn't see the problem, and that I had been very tense lately. I couldn't stay in that space anymore. I left the shop without saying goodbye to anyone. Update 1. A few hours later, still that same day, I received a message from my mother asking how the fitting had gone. She said my sister had commented that everything was under control. During lunch break, I sat alone at a table in the back of the hospital cafeteria. She asked if she could sit. She commented on how busy the hospital was, on how tired I looked. When I finally spoke, I didn't organize the story. She listened without interrupting me. She just said it wasn't healthy, that I wasn't exaggerating, said I wasn't obligated to accept that just because it came from family. The person I had talked to was married to my grandfather. The age difference had always been the subject of whispers in the family, side comments at gatherings, and that kind of silent judgment no one admits out loud. A few days later, she sent me a simple message, asking if I wanted to get coffee after my shift. We talked for over an hour. She gave me a lot of advice. The family dinner with my grandfather was scheduled almost like an obligation, one of those gatherings no one wants to cancel because it looks bad. I considered making up an excuse, thought about saying I was on call, that I wasn't feeling well, anything. I arrived early. My mother arrived shortly after, accompanied by my sister. They walked in talking too loudly, laughing at something that clearly wasn't funny. My grandfather was sitting at the table, reading, and only looked up to greet us, without exaggerated enthusiasm. His wife came over to me, asked if I was okay. We sat at the table. My mother was the one who started. She asked how the wedding planning was going, with a smile that seemed rehearsed. I answered vaguely, said it was moving along, that I was handling what I could at my own pace. She commented that I insisted too much on doing everything alone. Before I could respond, she added that it was a good thing someone in the family had the time and willingness to truly help. She glanced quickly at my sister. My sister let out a short laugh, almost mocking, and said that some people simply didn't have the profile for that kind of event. No one laughed. My grandfather's wife reacted immediately, saying that comment was unnecessary. My mother replied with a laugh, as if it were all one big joke. and then she said something that hit me hard. She commented that even the dress seemed like it had been made for someone else. She said it lightly, almost affectionately, as if talking about the weather. My chest tightened. My grandfather stood up, his face tense in a way I had never seen before. He said he was tired of hearing contempt disguised as jokes, tired of seeing one granddaughter being diminished within her own family, said it had crossed the line a long time ago. My mother tried to react, pointed at me, said I was exaggerating, that I was too sensitive, that I was turning everyone against her, said I had always been weak. Before I could say anything, my grandfather interrupted her, said that if anyone was exaggerating, it wasn't me, said that house had rules and that respect was one of them. My mother stood up abruptly, told my sister to grab her things, said she wouldn't stay where she was being disrespected. Her tone was defiant, like she was waiting for someone to back down. Then my grandfather said firmly that no one was kicking anyone out, but that if someone had to leave, it wouldn't be me. The expression on my mother's face changed. It was as if, for the first time, she understood she had lost something. Update 2. I stayed at my grandfather's house. I didn't feel safe going back with my mother at that moment. I knew that intervention had changed everything. Nothing would go back to how it was before. I went down to the kitchen a little after 8 in the morning. My grandfather was already awake, sitting at the table, reading the newspaper with his usual posture. He was the one who spoke first. He said my mother had called early, said she was furious, that she felt humiliated, that she didn't accept what had happened and expected him to apologize. He said he had regretted many times not having intervened sooner. He said that house was his, that he had always opened the doors to family because he believed in unity, but that unity couldn't be sustained at the cost of constant humiliation of one person. Said he would no longer tolerate disrespect disguised as opinion. Then he said he had made something clear during the call with my mother, that she and my sister would no longer receive the money he sent monthly. It wasn't a threat. It was a decision. My chest tightened. I asked if he was sure. He said he wouldn't go back on it. His wife touched my shoulder and said I didn't need to carry that guilt, that it wasn't the consequence of one night, but of a pattern that had gone on too long. Later that day, my mother showed up at the house without warning. She didn't come in. She stayed outside. My grandfather went out. They talked for a few minutes. I didn't hear everything, but I saw her posture change. I saw when indignation turned into disbelief. I saw when she realized she was no longer in control. My sister sent messages later, some long, others too short. None asked for forgiveness. All revolved around injustice, exaggeration, how everything had been distorted. I didn't reply. I wish I could say that after my grandfather's decision, everything fell into a predictable order, that my mother and my sister accepted it. But it wasn't like that, not with someone like my sister. The following weeks were strange. I split my time between the hospital, my grandfather's house, and quick visits to my fiancé, who was staying at a hotel downtown because of professional commitments related to the wedding and events leading up to the ceremony. The physical distance between us was temporary. At no point did it cross my mind that it could become an opening. My sister didn't contact me directly after that day. Her silence was calculated. It always was. When she didn't show up, it was because she was preparing something. On the night before the wedding, I was at my grandfather's house trying to sleep. The digital clock read 11 at night when my phone vibrated. It was my fiancé's name. I answered thinking it was normal anxiety. It wasn't. He said my full name in that formal way he only uses when something is very wrong. Said I needed to come down, that something had happened, that I didn't need to run, but I needed to come. My heart started beating too fast. When I arrived, I first saw hotel security, 2 employees near the door. Then I saw a figure sitting in one of the hallway chairs, face partially hidden by hair. I would recognize that hair anywhere. My sister. My fiancé was a few steps away, phone in hand. When he saw me, he came over and spoke quietly, quickly, without beating around the bush. He said she had shown up alone at his hotel room door, that she pretended to be me, and the receptionist let her go up. He said she was there because she needed to talk. When he tried to close the door, she stepped forward, opened her coat over what she was wearing, and made it explicit what she was offering. She was wearing lingerie underneath, said that would be my fiancé's bachelor party. I felt immediate anger. He said he told her to leave, that he spelled it out clearly that it was inappropriate, that he was marrying me the next day, that she was crossing a serious line, said she laughed, said she told him no one needed to know, commented that I wasn't there, that I was always too tired, too busy. When he closed the door, she started knocking insistently. Someone in the hallway heard. Security was called. I arrived at the moment one of the employees asked if he wanted to call the police. My fiancé said yes. My sister started crying loudly. Performative crying, desperate, drawing attention. Said she was being wronged, that everything had been misunderstood, that it was just a test to see if my fiancé was really faithful to me, and that if he showed interest, she, as a concerned sister, would tell me to save me from marrying a jerk. I thought about all the times she had put herself in my place, all the times I had given in to avoid conflict. When the police arrived, they asked formal questions. Times, full names, descriptions. My fiancé answered calmly. I confirmed what had been said. My sister was taken to give a statement. We went into his room. He apologized for having to involve me in that on the eve of our wedding. I said there was nothing to apologize for, that he had done exactly what needed to be done. The next morning, while I was getting ready for the wedding, I received messages from my mother asking us to withdraw the complaint, said it would destroy my sister's life, that it was an exaggeration, that family doesn't do that it was just a joke. I didn't reply. The ceremony was simple, the way I had wanted it from the beginning, even when they tried to convince me I needed something bigger, flashier, more comment-worthy. The wedding happened without them, without interruptions. When I walked down the aisle, I wasn't thinking about them. I was thinking about the fact that I was choosing someone who saw me as whole, not replaceable. My grandfather was visibly emotional, but composed. His wife held my hand longer than usual, as if saying something without words. That was enough. The consequences of what had happened the night before unfolded in the days that followed. Fines, records, lawyers, conversations I didn't need to be part of. My sister tried to make contact a few times, through indirect messages, always with the same tone. Injustice, exaggeration, victimhood. I didn't respond. My mother tried another route. She sent long messages saying I was destroying the family, that I should have protected my sister, that one woman doesn't do that to another woman, especially not to her own blood. I read everything once. I didn't reply. I blocked her. It was harder than I'd like to admit, not because I thought they were right, but because cutting ties requires accepting that something will never be what it should have been. There is no pretty closure to that. There is acceptance. I learned, maybe late, that maturity isn't enduring everything in silence. It's knowing when something costs more than you can afford.